Hello, everyone. I wanted to film a video today just to kind of capture the moment prior to reassembling both of these Titans back into individual Titan transformers, but also they will combine into an Autobot City. And while I'm at this point, I thought it would be a good idea to share some of the tips and key learnings that I had along the way. And just as an introduction, I just wanted to state that um, I don't do customs very often. When I was growing up, I did watch the Transformers show. I did have Transformers. I did do some models. I did some Robotech, which I painted, and that was, a challenge for me because, of course, they move, they transform, and some of them did. And so I do have some experience in that regard, but I really just don't do a lot of customs. I don't do it for a living. I don't make any money off it. I just basically do it for my collection. I started collecting Transformers around the Thrilling 30 time, so maybe about the last 7 years. Generally speaking, I would rather just buy a Transformer that's already painted the way I want it to be painted, or I could put some Toy Hack stickers on it. I just basically just take it out of the box, put it on a shelf. But every once in a while, I do get inspired to make a custom Transformer. So the other ones that I've done here are right here. These are completely done, and I'm about to finish these as well. So with that said, let me go ahead and just start to talk about the key points of what I've learned. So number one, the symbol that I have here is a light bulb. And so you're when you're about to start a custom, just ask yourself, why is it that you are making a custom? What is inspiring you to make a custom? In this situation, I was always inspired by like some of these large structures that were kind of like a home away from home, or some sort of mega structure, such as so you have Cybertron here, you have in Macross or Robotech, there's the SDF-1, and of course 1986 Transformers movie. There's Autobot City and these huge spaces, etc. I thought that was always kind of interesting. So that was kind of something I was looking to do, but at this point, Hasbro or third party has not created an Autobot City. I personally think that it's just a matter of time before someone starts making it with a 3D printer, or Hasbro makes it as one of their next projects. We already have an ARC coming, and I'm sure there'll be other ships as well. So it's probably just a matter of time, but it's just something that I wanted to take on and try. So that was my inspiration for the project. The second point is I have a tape measure out. So basically, when you're making a custom, like think ahead, like what kind of supplies you need, what do you need to get the project done, what kind of paints do you need, what other supplies do you need. So plan in advance. Third item here is just a little screwdriver. Um, just know what kind of tools you need to get the job done. What you may need, some long screwdrivers if you're going to pull everything apart. On this particular project, there were some areas, especially in Metroplex, that you really need a long screwdriver to get into, like either the arms or the chest, etc. So, you make sure you have everything that you possibly need. So, fourth item here is a pen. So, what that means is document what you are doing when you're disassembling a Titan or other robot, etc. So, if it's a relatively small figure, you might be able to figure it out. But in this situation, um, there are tons and tons of screws and ratchets and spacers, etc. And I had to label where everything came from, and I also took pictures of how everything was set up originally. And I learned that when I worked on a Primus project previously. Um, Primus was like a Swiss cuckoo clock. There were so many little cogs and springs, etc., and everything at surface value seemed like it was the same, but reality was it wasn't the same. So if you had swapped out like the wrong ratchet and put it in the wrong location, it may have been off, but just by a millimeter, you couldn't seal that space again with a screw. So I spent a lot of time kind of messing around with that, and I did learn from experience. Definitely take it, take note of where everything is coming from. Take pictures, and so you can fall back on that, and so you don't have a problem putting everything back together again. So the next item I have on here on our list here is it's basically a soft rag, and also some tweezers. So one of the ways in which I also customize figures is I use Toy Hacks labels. I really like them, and but the process to prepare a figure for paint and also for Toy Hacks label is basically the same. You can use a soft cloth with just a little bit of just a drop of soap, and that is enough to clean the surface area of the plastic so that there is no dirt, there's no dust, there's no oil on the surface area. So if you're just putting on a sticker, it will you're kind of guaranteeing you have the best adhesion. And also, if you're going to be painting, you want to make sure that the surface area is totally clean, free of dust. It's going to show up in the paint, and the paint may have problems with it later. So the next item we have here is a mask. So make sure you have proper ventilation. Um, Even when I was painting outside, some of the spray paints are really, really strong. They're not good for your health. You really should protect yourself. I even double masks sometimes. You could still smell it. There's better masks out there if you want to invest in it. But some of the fumes and such, they're really, really not good for you. They make you nervous, give you a headache, make you kind of sick, especially if you're painting inside. Make sure you're running a fan, you have a door open, you have the window open. It really can make a difference in your health. The next item I have here is some tape. So if you are tape painting things, you can always tape things down in advance. So here, like in the knee area, I taped over that before I painted. I didn't need paint in that area. And obviously, the more paint you have on items that are rubbing together, you know that some of your paint is going to start to crack. It's kind of the name of the game when it comes to Transformers. It's going to be really hard, but just be aware that you can use that. You can also use tape if you want to make a straight line. You could paint one color and then tape it down and then spray over the top of that, and at least you have a straight line on there. And let's go to the next item here, which is the primer. Um, you want to pick a primer for two reasons. One is that you have better adhesion of the top layer to the plastic through the primer. Some of it was self-etching. Some of it will actually help with plastic. I just got these, I think, from Walmart or Home Depot. I just kind of went wherever I could. And they also will help make sure that the paint that you put down is all kind of the same. So if you have like one really dark plastic and then a really light plastic, if you spray down the paint may have a slightly different color. So you just want to make sure the color is the same. So the next step I have here was picking the dominant color or the primary color or colors. And obviously with Autobot City, everything is super, super orange. It's really, really orange. And if you watch the actual sequences of the movie, in the very beginning, Perceptor comes out, and some of the surface area is actually more of like a sandstone color or a copperish color. And then the next sequence, it starts to become a more medium color orange. And then by the end of the scenes, it's all started turning to much darker orange. So I kind of invested in two different colors. The paint that I ultimately picked it's called Montana Gold. That's the name of the brand. It's not made in Montana. It's made in Germany. And the color is not gold. It's something else. So the two colors I settled on are Capri, which is I think the number is 2060, and then Pure Orange, which is 2080. That's the darker orange. And I was very happy with these paints. I would recommend it to anyone who wants to make an Autobot City. I've seen a couple examples out there on Instagram and Pinterest. I think someone made it out of plywood. I've seen people make it out of cardboard. I saw a G1 Metroplex also. So I've seen other people make Autobot City just with different materials, but I would recommend these paint colors if you are interested. I also used a Rust-Oleum. It's called Forged Hammered. I don't know if you could read that, but I'd use the same one on the two Primuses I have here. I highly recommend the color. I really like how it comes out. It's just a beautiful effect. It's kind of like a dark metallic. It really does look like someone just poured it out of a forge, and I really would recommend it. In terms of the accent colors here, obviously everything in Autobot City was very orange, but there were some dark gray sections. There were some metallic sections, for like pipes, etc. So I picked two testers, Model Master colors. I think it was Battleship Gray and Steel. And you could see in some of the internal areas here, I colored in the pipes, and then the darker recessed areas I made with this charcoal gray. I think it came out really good in a lot of areas. It took me a while to kind of get the exact balance of what I wanted, but you can kind of see up close. These are just some of the choices which I made when putting this together. Overall, I tried to be really consistent if I could terms of my treatment of the areas. So it does look cohesive for each individual bot, but it also it's easier for me to keep track of like what am I doing. So I didn't kind of overdo it in some areas and just kind of be as consistent as I possibly could. And in terms of how I was treating all of the surface areas. So let's talk about after obviously you've painted, you need some good brushes. Highly recommend just investing in some fine tip brushes. You can get them on Amazon, get them in a toy hobby store. And keep in mind as well, when I was painting on this project, it was so big that I actually wore out some of the brushes. So I was trying to paint some really detailed areas, some of the minifigures that I have, and I just couldn't get the detail that I wanted. And I was like, this is crazy. I thought I had new brushes, and I looked at my brushes, and I've actually worn them out. So I just replaced them. They're not that expensive. They're like, I don't know, like $10 to $20 for a pack of 6. So definitely invest in that if you can. Um, and let's see here. After you've used your brushes, of course, you do need some thinner, depending on what kind of paint it is. So if it's Testors, you can just use some Testors thinner. There's Tamiya and Testors, by the way. Testors is an enamel paint, whereas Tamiya paint, which is also very popular, that is, I believe, it's an acrylic paint. And so you want to basically use the thinner that's designed for that paint. The actual spray here is also an acrylic paint like Tamiya. And I highly recommend these spray paints here. And I also just use Testors because that's what was locally available to me. That's the color that I'm just used to having it already. I already had the thinner, so I just kind of ran with it. And I also put out here some isopropyl alcohol. If you do paint something and it's just like, I really don't like how this came out and I want to start all over again, you can put it inside a container and soak it overnight, and then just take it off with a toothbrush in the morning or something like that. It will work pretty well. Be careful if you're using, if it's a clear plastic, just be aware that it will etch the surface. I also put these paints here in a small container for just spill protection. You can spill your paint. You may spill your paint. Mistakes do happen, and it can make sure that you don't have a total disaster and your paint doesn't get on all the other surface area that you painted. You could also recover some of the paint if you have it in a small container. The next thing I have out here is an X-Acto knife. If you are painting something with a brush, you may accidentally touch another area that you weren't meaning to cover. You could take the X-Acto knife and kind of gently kind of scrape it off, and it will save yourself a lot of time and clean up later. I do recommend that you have one. So the next thing here is enamel paints, which specifically these are fluorescent paints. And how these work is that they do not glow in the dark. So I get that question a lot. They don't glow in the dark. You need to have a UV light here that will react with it. So when it reacts, it will make it glow. So those are the two things that you do need to have to make it work. And I did use the UV light, the fluorescent paint on my Metroplex here. And I decided to do the same thing for my Autobot City. So I'm just using one here. It's well lit up in the area that I'm in right now. You can still see how it will light up here. I can pause the video and come back and then turn off the lights. You can see it. I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I've just dimmed the lights a little bit here. You can see with the UV light how it does make the areas that have been treated with fluorescent paint pop out. So on both of the Titans, I did paint in all the areas which are kind of like either windows and blue, any sort of areas that could be like lasers or some sort of a blaster. You can see that Metroplex's eyes and his visor I painted blue. Any areas that could be a screen. It took a long time to paint all these in. Again, I just decided, this kind of artistic decision, that I was going to paint in what looks like windows as a window. And any blaster areas, again, I made them orange or red. So you can see on the shuttles, I added little windows everywhere. And these could be towers. And like the end of the missile tips are all orange now. Blasters or the engines are all orange. There's little windows on the feet. And kind of did the same thing over here. Eyes for Fort Max. And, more windows. and you kind of see them all over here. I have them on the back of the legs, there's on the side. So I just kind of, I like the effect of it. I already had the paints. I'd used it on a Metroplex project previously, so I did use that. So while we're talking about this, if you are going to use fluorescent paints, just a word of caution here for a couple things. So just be aware that some plastics will react to UV light different than what you expect. So here is a shuttle that is just like it was a standard out of the box shuttle. But as you see, it looks all completely orange. When I use the UV light, you can see that the plastic parts that are not painted actually turn yellow. So the same thing can happen with paint. So this is a airbrush paint, which I did not use an airbrush on this project. I was just testing it out. Didn't work out for a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons was that the paint that I picked, it was actually, it reacted under UV light. So there would have been kind of like a waste if I were to try to color in fluorescent paint for the details and then the whole thing was all orange. So just keep in mind that various plastics can react to UV light like that, and it will not, you basically won't have the desired effect. And I'm going to pause the video and I will be right back and turn the lights back on. Okay, I'm back again. So the UV lights, you can pick them up anywhere, hobby store, you can pick them up on Amazon. There's little flashlights, which I just use, and there's also, you could have a plug-in one if you have something on your shelf, and they both work, but just keep in mind, again, it takes two to tango. The paint does not glow by itself. You need to have another UV light to make it work. And the other thing I wanted to really make sure that everybody understands about fluorescent paint. So the paint does work, as you just saw. The effect can be quite dramatic and really cool, but the problem with the fluorescent paint is that, first of all, in order to get the maximum benefit, it usually works best if it's on a lighter surface area. So Metroplex was great because Metroplex, as you know, comes out of the box and the figure is basically totally white. So on the areas that I painted it in, they were basically ready to have that fluorescent paint work with it very well. It had a white background and it worked out great. But on the other areas that I had to basically, to make sure that the paint really showed up well, is I had to paint in white sections here before, let's see, on the arms are gray, and in order for the paint to look bright and for the effect to really kick in. So I actually had to use white paint here and put in not one but usually two layers of white paint in all the areas that I was painting in for the UV effect. Then I had to put on the actual paint itself, the fluorescent paint, and it is difficult to work with. It does have a stronger smell than most other paints, and it's very kind of, it's like painting with Elmer's glue. It's thick, it sticks to all the surface areas. Be aware that it also can act as a solvent. So when you will put it on, it may act, if you try to say, like, you put on a coat and you decide, oh yeah, I want to put on another coat right away, you inadvertently will have dissolved the white coat that's on the bottom beneath it, and you'll have to redo it over again. So just be aware that you'll probably have to put two layers of fluorescent paint on to get this effect, so that it's kind of like a solid blue here. So you see the windows and stuff. All of these, I had to put multiple coats on, multiple coats of white, multiple coats of blue for the windows. It does take patience. It's hard to get it to come out really, really good. It takes multiple coats to get that in there, but it is worth it for the effect in the end. But just be aware of what you're getting into before you start. It can be difficult to work with. Okay, so the next things here are just accent colors. So I want to talk about this. A lot of people that I know have used Sharpie markers, and that's a great way. If you already have like just plastic to work on, you could take like a fine tip Sharpie. You can, make eyes red. You could use a red Sharpie. You could use brown or orange or some other accent color that you want. Another thing that you could try is using Gundam markers. So I have like a gray one, a black one, a brown one here. And I wanted to show you on the Metroplex here, I used a Gundam marker and it worked out quite well. And all the little lines you see, I just did I think it was a gray Sharpie, and it came out really good. It was the first time I'd ever used the Gundam marker. But on this project, I tried to use a Sharpie, and just after like a few millimeters, the marker would tap out. Just could not write on the acrylic. Then I tried to use a gunna marker. Same thing. It just would not uh, mark the surface area very well, and it was actually a little bit too strong. And that's when I tried for the first time. I tried to use a wash. You can use these for panel lining. This is something I picked up in my local hobby store when I could. And this is brown, and it actually worked really, really good. I really am happy that I did use a wash. You can see that I did use a fine tip brush, and I kind of just painted in all the areas. You can make some areas thicker. You can make them darker just by putting on an additional layer. The wash is thin, and it will basically go to the lower surface areas. I tried to basically do all of the surface area and the whole thing. It just adds a little additional definition to kind of the recessed areas. It has a tendency to kind of fall down into it. You can see that I did it on all the chevrons here on the landing strips, and also in the arms, and just basically all of the surface area. I basically use the wash just to kind of bring out those surface details. And it's not too strong, but if you do want to make it darker, you can just do another layer. I'm really happy with the wash. And if you think that you've overdid it, you could just take some Q-tips here and you put a little thinner on it, and it will come right off. Or you could just kind of lessen. If you make a little mistake, it comes right out. It's really, really good to work with. So the next thing that I had trouble with actually was trying to find an orange paint. And I at the beginning of the project, I was just thinking, hey, it's orange paint. I could fill in some more details here, and I'll just go to the store and I'll get some orange paint. And I could not find orange paint. I thought it was very, very simple, but the orange paint I found, I just did not like. I used tester paint. I tried to use this testers, and it almost looks like a tomato milk soup or something. It didn't pass the fluorescent test. It reacted with UV light, so it wouldn't work. And then I thought I would make my own, so I used yellow and red, and I put it together. This is all kind of dried out at this point, but it also didn't pass the test. It reacted, and it was like, what am I going to do? And then I watched a video where this gentleman was talking about decanting, and basically decanting is take the spray and you attach a straw to it. You could either put some tape over the top or some putty, and then just spray it into a bottle. So then I got this little kit with extra bottles in it, and I sprayed my colors into the bottle, and it was perfect. It was like a perfect match for everything I needed. The only odd part that did happen was one of the colors, the darker orange, actually when I sprayed it out, it actually showed up being glossy, which is not what I wanted. I actually wanted everything to be more of a matte finish. And so in order to fix that problem, I used the dull coat lacquer, which I ordered on eBay. And what that does is it took away the shine, and also it can help to minimize and smooth out some sort of brush marks if you have a little bit, if it's kind of minor. It also does protect the paint below it. So you can use a clear coat for that. And it just helps to protect the paint, but it also could change the finish. And the final reminder I have here is basically stop, assess what you're doing. Make sure, it is what you want to do. Make sure that it is cohesive. And it's totally normal to, when you're trying something out, this is a custom, it's one of a kind. And you can see that there's some areas that I kept going back and forth. I wasn't really sure what kind of treatment that I wanted. So for the arms, for example, when I first started customing it, first I started painting on I really like vents for some reason. So I started painting on black vents, and I was like, it starts distracting from Autobot City. It's like some gray in it, but mostly it's orange. So that was kind of my challenge. How do I add, break up the surface area and add detail without overdoing it? So then I tried putting on charcoal gray in some of the arms. And then I was like, yeah, it still just doesn't look quite right. So then I actually took it off with some alcohol, and then I painted it over. Once I had decanted out some of the lighter orange here, the medium color orange, I decanted it out, painted it over. Then I did the wash on top. Then I did the dull coat on top, and it looked good after that. So, and then in the middle part here, I actually used the darker orange for the kind of the center section. you can imagine like this like blur is shooting out of those windows or something like that. But I just, a lot of it is experimentation. Some of the areas I got right away. So these Fort Max kind of side sections here, I got it right away. Like I was able to figure out what I wanted to do. I got like the pipes, etc. I painted them in as steel, and I got all the charcoal gray here right away. I liked it right away. Just add a little bit of wash, done. And other areas I struggled with, like these center legs. I first on the bottom, I painted these silver, and I just didn't like it. And I didn't initially see there was a recessed area here. And then I eventually made this charcoal gray, and then it all kind of came together. So I had changed this to silver and then orange and then silver again. And then I finally painted again as orange. And it finally kind of just came together, but it took a while. I was just kind of hemming and hawing. A lot of the custom that you're doing is sometimes is painting, but a lot of times it's just actually figuring out what you're trying to achieve. Is it cohesive? You're doing some testing, etc. And that's actually a large part of a custom, is just thinking about what you want to do. And so eventually I just kind of I was at peace with what I had done, and I kept, working on things. And I just trying to be consistent across the board again. And it just took a while. Like there's certain other areas that I struggled with. So Metroplex's chest here, first I had made it all silver. Like I was going like really like too heavy on the silvers, etc. I was like, it just doesn't look right. And then I took it off with some thinner. Then I covered it up with like the darker orange. I thought that looked pretty good. Then I did a wash, and then eventually I did a clear coat over the top, the dull coat, to take away the shininess. And then I was pretty happy with it. And another area here was this little kind of helipad zone where there's little runways. At first, I just had the darker recessed area as this darker orange, and then I started making all these panels on the top orange, and it just started getting too busy, and I kind of backed that off, and then I eventually made it all capri again color, which is the medium orange, and then I was happy with it. But it just can take a while, and there's other areas where I kind of accented it a little bit. Like here on Metroplex's leg, I wanted to kind of make this as kind of like a harbinger of what was to come. So I made like the darker orange on the stripe, and that kind of looks a little bit like my other custom here. And by the way, the backstory for this particular Titan custom is that these are prototype Titans. So they basically are nameless at this point, and Ultra Magnus was able to find them in a off-world colony and bring them back to Earth. So that's my backstory. So let's look at the figures in the middle. You're probably asking about those. So I have a variety of these little, I'll just call them micro figures. So the first set that you see is this Make Toys Citizen set that came with a Devastator. It came with individual 6 vehicles. It also came with an Optimus Prime. Looks like a G2 Optimus Prime. And there was also another Optimus Prime here in the red and black in vehicle form. Also, you see all the green Constructicons here. There's one of each. And then I had actually a second set. I had actually purchased this Utopia. I'm the third owner of the Utopia several years ago. And in the box came with this yellow G2 Devastator. I still don't know where these are. If you happen to know, you can add the comment in the comments as to where this came from. And so there was a second set of Constructicons. So I was like, you know what? I really want to make Autobots. And I was like, so I started thinking about it. So I started using these little tweezers here, or pliers or snippers or whatever they are. And I started snipping away at the G2 Constructicon. So I made Megatron here. There's the original one. And then I made a Perceptor. Then I made a Blur. Then I made a Springer. I cut off the top here. I think that's Mixmaster. And then I made a Blaster. He's kind of a big arms, but it is what it is. And then an RC. And this Ultra Magnus is actually Make Toys Utopia. It was like a miniature that came with the actual set. I didn't get all the components, but that was one that came with it. These are the jets from Combiner Awards Broadside. So these are the aerial bots, and then I made a set of Seekers plus Blitzwing, and also Cyclonus, and I cut away at his wings a little bit, so you see it looks a little different. And then these are from the Fans Project Assaulter. So there was a set of figures. I didn't get them all. Again, this all came to me in this package I got. I did not paint the other figures except for the one in the middle. This is the steel core, so I did paint all that as well. But So again, this is pretty much it. I'm kind of running out of time on this video, but if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. You probably had more experience at this perhaps than I do, but this again, I don't do these customs very often, but I did have quite a bit of fun with it. I guess you can call it a lockdown challenge. I started it at the beginning of the lockdown. I didn't work on it consistently all the time. I worked on it for like 2 months in the very beginning, and then I walked away from it for about 6 months. I'll share a couple other things. One of the hardest things for me to do was to find the paint color. So I ID'd it in the video earlier, but I was having a problem. I have a Samsung phone, which I like, and I've had it for a couple of years, but I think it oversaturates some of the paint color or the colors on the screen. So during the lockdown, most of the stores are closed. So I kept trying to order things online, and everything took a long time to arrive. And I kept getting the paint in hand. I was like, this is not what I saw on my screen. Like, it would come in person, and it was like yellow. It was like mustard yellow. I'm like, no way, this is not what I wanted. And then eventually, just for giggles, I pulled it up on an iPad, and I was like, this is an exact color match. So I just, as an experiment, I ordered it from, I think it was either HomeDepot.com or Blick Art Supplies actually carry this paint color, and they have like 10 different versions of this of orange. And then once I did that, it actually was the exact color. So I was happy. I just used an iPad. Maybe it was just my phone. I don't know. The other thing I was going to mention here is that I did try to use an airbrush, and I've never used an airbrush before. Again, I don't do a lot of customs all the time. I'm just using the knowledge that I do have, and it just didn't work out. But that's okay. It's the way things go. It kept sputtering on me, and then people were trying to help me, and I had to add something else into it. But in retrospect, given the amount of paint that I actually had to use, it's all right. And also the fact that the paint that I happened to pick glowed under UV light, it's okay. It was a blessing in disguise. Not a big deal. I did learn. And finally, there's a little bit of sandpaper here if you ever wanted to polish if you brushed anything and you see the brush strokes on there. That was one of the downsides of using this decanted spray paint, is that it dries very quick, and so it was very thick early on. So there were a few areas that I had to sand down, like on the legs here, and then I put the dull coat over the top, and it seemed to take away a lot of the paint strokes. But anyways, I hope you liked the video. I will be adding a few more of the other Titans that I've done. Most of them are just with toy hacks, labels. I've also swapped out some parts. And thank you. Have a good day.